Hello everyone, I am Dr. Deepa. Today we will learn about the wrist joint. The wrist joint in the upper limb is also known as the radiocarpal joint, as this is the joint between the radius, the long bone of the forearm, and the carpal bones. We study the wrist joint under the following headings, that is the type, articular surfaces, ligaments, the relations, the blood supply, nerve supply, and the movements along with the applied anatomy of the joint. To begin with, the type of the wrist joint. This wrist joint or the radiocarpal joint is the ellipsoid variety of the synovial joint. It is the ellipsoid variety of the synovial joint. So this is about the type of the joint. Moving on to the articular surfaces of the joint. The wrist joint represents the articular surface in its proximal part and along its distal part. In the proximal portion, the articular surface is contributed by two components. One is the inferior surface of the lower end of the radius, and number second is the articular disc of the inferior radioulnar joint. Yes, so these are the two things which contribute in making up the radioulnar joint in its proximal part. Yes, in the proximal part, the joint is formed by the inferior surface, of the inferior surface of the lower end of the radius, and also the articular disc between which is formed by the inferior radioulnar joint, whereas in the distal part the articular surface is contributed by the lateral bones of the carpal in its proximal row, that is the scaphoid, the lunate, and the triquetral bone. So these are the bones taking part in the articular surfaces. I repeat, the carpal bones which take part in forming the wrist joint are the scaphoid, the lunate, and the triquetral bone. In the proximal part, the articular surface is mainly formed by the inferior surface of the radius and the disc, that is the articular disc of the inferior radioulnar joint. So this is about the articular surfaces of the joint. Next, moving on to this is the picture where we can see in detail about the articular surfaces. As I have mentioned just now, the articular surfaces in the proximal part and in the distal part. In the proximal part, we can make out the distal end of the radius taking part in the joint along with the articular disc here. So here this is the distal end of the radius, that is the inferior surface of the radius, and the articular disc over here. So this is in along the proximal part. In the distal portion we can make out the scaphoid, the triquetrum, and the lunate. The scaphoid, lunate, and triquetrum, these are the three bones which take part in the formation of the joint. So this is the proximal articular surface of the joint here. So the styloid process of the radius seen over here, the articular surface meant for the scaphoid, the articular surface which is meant for the lunate, and a small portion which is represents the articular disc. So this is the inferior surface of the radius. The ulna is excluded from the formation of the wrist joint. Yes, the head of the ulna or the styloid process of the ulna is not involved in formation of the wrist joint. So this is about the articular surfaces of the joints. So in this picture we can see here, yes, so this is the lower end of the radius. Yes, we can see here the relationship between the ulna and the carpal bones. There is no connection between the lower end of the ulna and the carpal bones. Hence, the ulna doesn't take part in formation of the wrist joint. So there is the scaphoid, lunate and the triquetral. The scaphoid, lunate and the triquetral which takes part in the formation of the joint over here. Moving on to the ligaments of the joint. So the ligaments of this wrist joint mainly include the capsular ligament or the articular capsule. Then there comes the palmar radiocarpal ligament, the palmar ulnocarpal ligament, dorsal radiocarpal ligament, the radial and the ulnar collateral ligaments. We'll look for these ligaments one by one. This is the easy diagrammatic view showing the palmar radiocarpal ligaments over here. Yes, this palmar radiocarpal ligament is nothing but the thickening. So the palmar and the dorsal radiocarpal ligaments are nothing but the thickenings of the capsular ligament itself in its proximal part and the dorsal part, in its palmar aspect and its dorsal aspect. So the attachment of the capsular ligament is over the peripheral margins of the inferior end or the peripheral margin of the articular surfaces over the radius and the articular disc, and inferiorly the attachment of this capsular ligament is over the articular margins of the scaphoid, lunate and the trapezium. So this is about the fibrous capsule or the capsular ligament. The palmar radiocarpal ligament represents the thickening of the articular capsule or the capsular ligament on the palmar side on its anterior surface, which extends inferomedially. So the direction of these radiocarpal ligaments are inferiorly directed, that is inferomedially directed mainly. The palmar radiocarpal ligament extends from the articular margin of the radius above and extends down to reach the scaphoid and the lunate. Whereas on the dorsal aspect, the dorsal radiocarpal ligament extends from the lower end of the radius, directs inferiorly and medially to reach the scaphoid, lunate and the triquetral bones. So these are about the ligaments, dorsal and the palmar radiocarpal ligament. Other than the radiocarpal ligament, we can also look for the palmar ulnocarpal ligaments. The palmar ulnocarpal ligament, which extends from the styloid process of the ulna, directed down to reach the triquetral bone. So this is about the palmar ulnocarpal ligaments. So till now we have come across the four ligaments. One is the fibrous capsule. So the second is the radiocarpal ligaments, the palmar radiocarpal ligament and the ulnar radiocarpal palmar radiocarpal ligament and the dorsal radiocarpal ligaments. And the smallest ligament which we can see here is the ulnocarpal ligament which is present on along its palmar side. So other than these ligaments, we can also make out the collateral ligaments, that is the radial collateral ligament and the ulnar collateral ligament. The radial collateral ligament lies along the lateral side of the joint, which is seen to be extending from the styloid process of the radius over here. Yes, extending from the styloid process of the radius directed downwards to reach the scaphoid and the trapezium below. Whereas the ulnar collateral ligament extends from the styloid process of the ulna directed downward to reach the carpal bone, to reach the triquetral bone. So this is about the collateral ligaments. In this picture, we can make out the ligaments in detail. As I have already told you, the radiocarpal ligaments, that is the palmar radiocarpal ligament. the palmar radiocarpal ligament, which makes up, or it is seen as the thickened part of the capsular ligament anteriorly. So this is the palmar radiocarpal ligament over here, as we can see it extending from the distal end of the radius to the lunate and the scaphoid bones, whereas here, other than the radiocarpal ligaments, we can make out the ulnocarpal ligament here, the ulnocarpal ligament extending from the distal end of the ulna, that is the stylar process of the ulna directed towards the triquetral bone. So these are the ligaments. The other ligaments which is seen here are the collateral ligaments. Yes, these are the collateral ligaments. The radial collateral ligament number 1 on the lateral side and the ulnar collateral ligament along the medial side. So the radial and the ulnar collateral ligament extending from the medial and the lateral margins, from the medial and the lateral borders of the bones, respective bones, that is the radius and ulna, is seen over here. So there is radial collateral ligament, there is ulnar collateral ligament. Other than this, we can see, as I have already told you, the radiocarpal ligaments, one ligament along the medial side, that is ulnocarpal ligament, and other than this is the large capsular ligament covering the entire joint. So these are about the ligaments of the wrist joint. So this is the dorsal view of the wrist joint exposing the dorsal radiocarpal ligament. Yes, here this is the dorsal radiocarpal ligament, which is seen extending from the lower margin of the radius along its dorsal surface, reaching mainly the triquetral bone, over here. The direction of this ligament is inferomedial. We can also visualize the ulnar collateral ligament over here and the radial collateral ligament. So ulnar collateral ligament is seen from the ulna, that is the stylar process of the ulna, reaching the triquetral bone over here. The radial collateral ligament extending from the stylar process of the radius, reaching the trapezium bone here, trapezium and the scaphoid bone over the lateral side. Moving on to the relations of the joint. So the joint has got the proximal relations and the distal relations. Other than that, mainly the relations include the relations on the anterior surface, the posterior surface, the medial and the lateral surface. Along its anterior surface, or the palmar relations are mainly divided into relations of the superficial plane, relations in the intermediate plane, and the relations along the deep plane. In the most superficial portion of the joint, that is the anterior relations, is mainly formed by the tendon, that is the tendon of palmaris longus. The tendon of palmaris longus here. So in the superficial plane, the relation is mainly contributed by the palmaris longus tendon. Other than that, the tendon of flexor carpi ulnaris and also the tendon of flexor carpi radialis. So these three make up the superficial anterior relations of the joint. So in the superficial plane, the anterior relations is mainly formed by the palmaris longus tendon, the tendon of flexor carpi ulnaris and the tendon of the flexor carpi radialis. In the intermediate plane, that is just beneath the palmaris longus, within the flexor retinaculum, the relation is contributed by the tendon of the flexor digitorum superficialis. The tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis, the four tendons, digital tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis, and the important nerve, that is the median nerve. The median nerve, the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis make up the, and along with the ulnar vessels and the ulnar nerve. So all these make up the relation in the intermediate plane, anterior relation in the intermediate plane. just beneath the palmaris longus. The relations are the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis, the median nerve, and the ulnar vessels and the nerve. In the deepest plane, the anterior relation of the joint is mainly formed by the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, which are four. Other than that, the tendon of flexor pollicis longus along with the anterior interosseous vessels and nerves. So all these make up the anterior relation of the wrist joint. I repeat, the anterior relation of the wrist joint are arranged in three planes: superficial, middle or intermediate, and the deeper plane. In the superficial plane, the anterior relation is contributed by the palmaris longus. It is contributed by the palmaris longus, the flexor carpi ulnaris, and the flexor carpi radialis. In the intermediate plane, the anterior relation of the wrist joint is formed by the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis along with the tendon of flexor along with the median nerve and the ulnar artery and nerves. In the deeper plane, that is the anterior relations of the wrist joint is formed by the tendons of flexor digitorum profundus, flexor pollicis longus along with the anterior interosseous vessels and nerves. So all these make up the anterior relations of the wrist joint. The dorsal relations or the posterior relation of the wrist joint are the structures, that is the long extensor tendons which cross the wrist joint along with the posterior interosseous vessels and nerves which lie deep to the extensor retinaculum. So from lateral to medial side, the relations are the abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis longus, then comes the radialis longus and radialis brevis, that is extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor pollicis longus. The superficial most relation making up the cephalic vein and the basalic vein. Deep to the retinaculum lies the tendon of the extensor digitorum, the extensor indicis, and in the medial most part, the joint is related to the extensor carpi ulnaris and extensor digiti minimi. So all these extensor tendon along with the posterior interosseous vessels and nerve which lie deep to the extensor retinaculum make up the posterior relations of the joint, posterior or the dorsal relations of the joint. So these are the relations of the joint mainly. Moving on to the movements of the joint, the wrist joint mainly brings about flexion, extension, adduction, abduction and circumduction. The flexion of the wrist joint is about 85 degrees and takes place mainly at the mid-carpal joint than that of the wrist joint. This flexion is mainly contributed by all the flexor tendons passing through the retinaculum. The extension has got a limited angulation, that is extension is limited to the range of around 60 degrees and mainly occurs at the level of the wrist joint. So this is the difference here. Flexion is seen mainly at mid-carpal joint whereas the extension is mainly seen at the level of the wrist joint. So this extension, as you have already studied, it is contributed by the extensor tendons. The adduction is more extensive than the abduction. The adduction is more extensive than the abduction because of the short ulnar styloid process. The abduction of the wrist joint is mainly seen at the level of the mid-carpal joint rather than the wrist joint and is formed and it is contributed mainly by the long tendons of the crossing the wrist joint. The circumduction is nothing but the combination of all the movements, that is the flexion, extension, adduction and abduction. So this is about the movements of the joint. The adduction is mainly contributed by the ulnaris tendons, that is the flexor and the extensor carpi ulnaris, whereas the abduction is mainly contributed by the abductor pollicis longus contributed by the radialis tendons. Lastly, moving on to the applied aspect of the wrist joint. The wrist joint is the commonest site of the rheumatoid arthritis. There is something called as ganglion which is seen at the dorsum of the wrist joint. This ganglion is nothing but which is seen as inflammation and the mucoid degeneration of the synovial sheath covering the extensor, the tendons passing through the retinaculum. So, it is seen as a cystic swelling on the dorsum of the wrist. The wrist joint can be aspirated from the posterior surface between the tendons of the flexor pollicis longus and the tendons of the flexor digitorum. There are certain important fractures regarding the wrist joint which is named as the Colles fracture and the Smith's fracture. The Colles fracture results from the fall on the outstretched hand. It involves mainly the distal end of the radius and fracture line is transverse. Yes, the fracture line is transverse here and the force of impact displaces the lower fragment of the bone upwards and backward. So this gives an classical appearance of dinner fork, hence called as dinner fork deformity. On the other hand, the Smith's fracture is opposite to that of the Colles fracture. It is the reverse of the Colles fracture which is produced by the fall on the back of the hand. Yes, the fracture is produced by the fall on the back of the hand. The distal fragment is displaced forwards and upwards carrying the carpus and the hand with it. So this is about the Smith's fracture. So this is about in all about the applied aspect or the clinical importance in relation to the wrist joint. So to end up with, we have discussed about the type of the joint, the articular surfaces of the joint, the various ligaments related to the joints, the relations, movements, the applied importance of the wrist joint. Thank you.